You've allowed us to have a quorum today, so thank you both. Clerk, if you would, start the official part. Items
Sure.
1 through 5.
Sure, I will do that. So this is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Health and Human Services. It is March 23rd, 2026 at 5 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Health and Human Services will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmar.czak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams. I believe next, you said 1 through 5 on the opening ceremonies. Can we please have a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces? All right, and can you please join me in the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and now.
Thank you. So we have quorum.
We need a roll call, though, if you don't mind.
Let's do a roll call. Yes,
let's actually do a roll call. So, hold on. For this committee, I believe that Delegate Frederickson, has he joined us yet?
Yeah.
Oh, you are here. Good.
Can't use my computer, but I'm here.
Okay. And Delegate Green is not here, but we do have Delegate Harder for Delegate Green.
Here.
All right. And then we've got Delegate McKelvey. It's a hand wave, but your mic's off. I'm gonna count that as a ear. Okay. Chair O'Malley.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. The transcript wants to know. Chair O'Malley and Vice Chair Ty is absent, but we have Delegate Sampson for her, and that is 5 members, Mr. Chair.
So declare quorum and we'll open the meeting. I see that Administrator Michael Dutton is on this call, and I'll ask if you have any comments or guidance or other perspectives to give to this committee before we begin.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee, but I don't have a whole lot to offer until you dig into your agenda this evening. But I will point out that I think we've got strong budgets in front of you. Obviously, always subject to the vote of this committee and then the vote of the Assembly as well. But I think we've got some strong budgets in front of you. The budget guidance that we gave the departments this year was a level services budget, unless there was a clear mandate and a clear direction to provide additional services. We asked for sustainable budgets, ones that generally countywide could survive the ups and downs of our revenue cycle. So I think what's in front of you, I hope, is with some explanation from the department heads and myself. I think we will be able to answer most, if not all, of your questions. So with that, I would certainly turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Administrator Dutton. All right, we're following the agenda. We're going to open first with the Human Rights Advisory Commission. And I can't see. Oh, I good. Director Santos Domingo. Dominguez. I see your initials. There we go. Welcome. So,
Thank you.
you want to begin by giving us a little bit of a perspective? We certainly, clearly, we don't need the overview of what the program is. We know that that's a really big story. I think what we're looking for is, in general, we're looking for changes. Now, your department is coming in with the same staffing it's had. And to my knowledge, from my involvement, no major changes in our program this year. So I think the question that I posed in the memo was, is staffing adequate? You're part-time, and we have another, and we have the other half part-time assistant. Is that adequate? Are we okay with that?
So I don't know, Michael, Administrator Dutton, I don't know if you want to speak first.
I'll certainly defer to Leslie on some of the larger answer, but I think right about now we've got a lot of challenges as it concerns the Human Rights Commission, Advisory Commission, and not with them, but with the scenarios that we've seen come to pass throughout all the towns, all 15 towns over the last couple of years. So do we have, we never have enough to provide the services that we could, but I think we're in a sweet spot. Leslie does an incredible job in the time that she engages, and Allison, her assistant, does an incredible job in the time that she engages. So I think we are holding our own in that regard. And as I say, the challenges that Leslie has faced over the last couple of years that I've seen are significant, but are handled with care and compassion. So I'll defer to Leslie on any more thoughts that she has.
Thank you. And thank you, Delegate O'Malley, for asking the question. What I always say about this position is that it ebbs and flows. And so when we are leading into an event, it is a lot. And then there are quieter moments. And so, year long, I think we do okay with current staffing. When we're ramping up to an event, do I have days when I think, oh my God, I wish we had more help? Yes, of course. I think if, if we wanted our presence to be huge and obvious, then I would push more for more staffing. But I think, as Administrator Dutton said, I do think we're in a sweet spot right now, except when we're about to do an event.
So for the benefit of those members of the committee who may not be as familiar with the work of the HRAC, I would simply point out that over the course of the year, they conduct 3 major events, those being the Human Rights Academies for local high school students that happen in the fall and the spring, and then the Human Rights Day celebration, which is a major big event. I mean, everybody who's anybody in the political world on Cape Cod shows up at that event. It's packed. It's probably, I don't know, a couple hundred people show up. So it's big planning. That's really an event. And and then you do lots of little community things. But I know those in particular impose a lot of staff demand. So let me at this point open this to the committee for questions. I see Delegate Harder has a hand raised.
Thank you, Chair O'Malley. So I want to know, first of all, are you are you full with all the town liaisons and all the members of the committee that you need?
There are a few liaisons that we still do not have. We just interviewed for our 1 open seat and our 2 alternate seats. The official appointing of those 3 individuals is still in the works. But in those interviews, we also identified somebody who could fill one of our open liaison spots. That leaves us with open spots for town liaisons in Harwich and Eastham, as well as the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. We do have a representative from the Herring Pond tribe.
Okay, so I need to get back in Harwich again. And the other thing is, with the events, is there any way that you can think of where we could get people to step up to help right in that, forefront? Is there perhaps, even just hiring, some high school kids to schlep boxes or something? I mean, I'm wondering, because I know, planning events like that, I always lose my mind for a month before. So I'm wondering if you can think of any way we might be able to help you with that. Thanks.
So I'm going to defer to Administrator Dutton first, and then I do have thoughts, but I'm going to defer to him.
Thank you, Leslie. So Delegate Harder's question is a good one, and I think for a number of years, Leslie struggled with how to balance the events and the quiet time and come up with a happy medium. But the events and certainly the summer events, are almost a weekly or daily occurrence, really, in some cases. So it occurred to us that we've got an AmeriCorps program that provides a whole host of different services to a whole host of different organizations on the Cape, and so we are coupling AmeriCorps with the work that Leslie does, and seeing if we can get some synergies there. So, but with that, I'd turn it over to Leslie.
So I was going to mention the AmeriCorps piece. I think that would be really fantastic. In the summer, we do a lot of outreach. We go to a lot of community fairs. It'd be great to have more hands. And again, event planning. The other thing I will say, simply because we had our Human Rights Academy today, so I am full with the glory of young people. And so I don't know whether the county even has a process for being able to offer stipends to high school students who do amazing things. All I will say is that there are a lot of amazing high school students that are doing amazing things. And then I leave it to all of you to say, I don't know if you can make that work, but.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. I see a question from Delegate McKelvey.
Yes, along the same lines, instead of finances, these high school kids all need community service hours. So volunteering something like that would be, I think, helpful, right along with what Elizabeth was saying. But also, I mean, do you have a volunteer pool or a volunteer outreach to bring people in to help you with these events on a volunteer basis? I'm new to the committee, so I don't know. So thank you.
So I have the most amazing volunteers in all of Cape Cod. That's what I'm going to say. We have our committee is comprised of volunteers. So we have 9 appointed members and then liaisons from each town and tribe. And they are volunteers from all of the communities across the Cape, and they're incredible. And I would not be able to do what I do without them. There's always a fine line between honoring what a volunteer does and then asking too much of a volunteer. And I don't want to put people out, but certainly leading up to our Human Rights Academy today, the volunteers that work on that project were all in.
Great. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. I raised the question in my memo, Leslie, about the supplies and materials that you do, that budget of 15,000. We're talking fairly small money here. Is that adequate? Are we okay with that? I know,
Administrator Dutton, do you want to go first?
I will defer to Leslie on that one.
Yeah.
I actually, yes, thank you. It is adequate. The biggest expense really is food. Food is so expensive. So the bulk of the number you just quoted, Delegate O'Malley, is food.
Yes.
When it comes to supplies, I inherited this amazing cabinet of goodies. And so like today's Academy Today, we still had pens and sticky notes and markers and all the things that we would need for school things are still in that cabinet. Our printing costs did go up this year, and I know that the budget reflects that simply because the more outreach we do, the more materials we need. But yes, it's adequate. Thank you.
Good. That's a marker of success. That's going up. I mean, the attendance grows and we need more for it. Okay, that's great. Is there any other question from the committee? Right, I don't see any, but I don't see anyone else on the call. Wait, let me just look at the second page of attendees. No, I don't see anyone else on the call with a question. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend the human rights budget to the Finance Committee for acceptance.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And clerk, will you take a poll on that? Call the roll?
I will. So that's a favorable recommendation as the budget is proposed. So we're doing.
Yes.
All right.
Phrase it out.
Delegate Frederickson, are you still with us?
Yes.
All right. And I believe next is Delegate Green, but we've got Delegate Harder for Delegate Green.
Yes.
And Delegate McKelvey,
Yes.
Chair O'Malley,
Yes.
and Delegate Sampson for Vice Chair Ty.
Yes.
That's 5, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. All right. That will be, that recommendation will go to the Finance Committee. All right, next on our agenda is the Human Services Department. I think I saw Director Pacheco on the line. Yes, I do. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, delegates.
Good evening.
And okay, I'm going to follow let's follow the same sequence here. Administrator Dutton, do you have anything you want to lead into this department discussion?
I think you see an exceptional budget presented to you, human services budget presented to you. I think Joe perfectly capable of walking through some of the details with you and any questions. I will point out again, it's level services budget, and that is what we asked of the department heads, and certainly Joe has given you a level services budget. But I think at this point, I'll defer to Joe to give you more detail.
Thank you. And welcome, Director Pacheco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions from you and the committee.
Do you have any kind of oversight you want to give us? Again, not so much what your department does,
Sure.
but the questions around. I think the perspective that I want to bring here. This is the Health and Human Services Committee, meaning that although this recommendation will go to Finance, whose overwhelming goal is to see how the numbers work. I think part of our role is to try to understand whether the budget you're working with is adequate to do what you need to do. So we have that kind of aim at this. So with that in mind.
Sure. So appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. With me is our Deputy Director, Mandy Speakman. And to answer your question, sure. I mean, I don't know many department heads who would turn down more money if the opportunity presented itself. But I'm keenly aware of the economics that we're dealing with, not just in the county and not just in the state, but obviously nationwide right now. And so, the charge before us was a level services budget. As the administrator said, that's what we put forward. If it wasn't for the competent staff in the department, I think we would be having a different discussion. But because of the commitment skill set and dedication of the human services staff, we're able to, in my opinion, continue to deliver high quality services in an efficient manner throughout all of Barnstable County at a budget that is being proposed at a 0.11% increase. And that is not a misspeak. It is 0.11.
Which is impressive, I must say. So in the memorandum I circulated, I posed two questions. One concerned the older adult social services program manager whose grant funding is going to run out. What is that going to mean?
Sure. Administrator, do you want to start, or do you want me to take that, sir?
I'll just start. I think so on the 30,000 foot level, we applied for and we received funding for the older adult social services program. That funding runs out this year. The committee may or may not know that funding is scheduled to run out. Joe has planned for that and had planned for that from the very get-go. So he's got sort of a plan to absorb some, but not all of that work into the department. However, I'll let Joe explain a little bit about his effort to apply for future grant funding.
Thanks, Administrator. Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me, I'll give you a quick overview, and then I'd like to tap in the Deputy Director who oversees this particular program, because I think she'll provide you some of the additional context you're seeking. So as the Administrator said, our funding is set to expire during FY27. As quick background, this program was launched. We were one of only 4 entities in the entire Commonwealth who received this funding from the state of Massachusetts. We received $200,000. Those funds were set to expire in September of 2025. But because we had some additional funds available, the state granted us a no-cost extension through December of 2025. So that allowed us to sustain the program and bring in some extra outside funding to keep it going. As the Administrator said, we're in the middle of an application process right now for $500,000, and that would last us between 3 to 5 years. And I say last us between that because the high amount is $500,000, but we could be given an award less than that. So that would dictate how long the term of it is. If we are not successful, and I'm optimistic that we will be very competitive in this process, we've structured this similar to the way RSAC, the Regional Substance Addiction Council, is structured, where it's largely based on volunteer and community engagement and support and leadership to keep it going. And so when we proposed this position 2 years ago, we were keenly aware we might not be able to sustain the funding, but we wanted to sustain the good work that it is doing. So we were setting up really parallel tracks to keep the train running, per se. And so with that, I'll turn it over, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, to Deputy Director Speakman.
Go right ahead, Deputy Director Speakman.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So as Joe alluded to, we set up the Healthy Aging Cape Cod program to be able to expand or contract depending on the resources that we have, including the staff resources in our department. And so Healthy Aging Cape Cod is currently pursuing age and dementia friendly, or we're in the process of creating our action plan. And so part of that action plan will include the ability to expand or contract the work as resources allow. We have really phenomenal a really phenomenal table set in terms of community partners and stakeholders, and a shared leadership model for both the overarching Healthy Aging Cape Cod leadership and for the separate work groups. The work groups that have been set up have been very deliberate and conscious. There are many priorities and interests from stakeholders in Healthy Aging Cape Cod, but we have been slow and careful in terms of standing up those work groups to ensure that along with the passion, there is the people power and the outside community involvement to be able to keep those running. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think Joe gave a great overview.
In a sense, you've built in some redundancy, a backstop plan for if the funding runs out, and I think that's particularly in these times, funding is never a totally assured stream. All right, I'll look for other questions from the committee. Okay, Delegate Harder, please.
Thank you. My question is about, I could not find where the fabulous new program, Shared Regional Housing, and I know the towns pay for it. Is that anywhere in the books, or is it just not even discussed because it's paid for by the towns? Because I couldn't find
Okay, I'm
really
going to
a
respond to
breakdown.
that. I'm going to respond to that, Delegate Harder. There was a memo circulated, and
Right.
I commend it to your
Yeah.
attention. Good,
The
okay.
big thing from Barrett, one thing I couldn't figure out was if it's in the budget at all or not.
So I can answer that. That's
Thank you.
just because of the sort of, I'll call it the high profile or important focus on affordable housing issues. We've transferred some of that budget, well, all of that budget to our budget, administration budget, which you'll be reviewing later this week or next week. But I can tell you that Joe continues to be involved with that very, very directly, and that is going very well at this point. The 2-year pilot program, I think you saw the report circulated, the final report circulated there. I think the towns, and I think there was a question about how do we sort of gauge success here, and I think the fact that 14 of the 15 towns wanted to continue. Only 13 were able to. I think the 14th will be joining us for the next program year. So that I think is a good gauge of success. But to answer your very short question, that's where that budget is located.
Okay, so it's under you now. Because yeah, I mean the program, boy, do I hear wonderful things about it. I just didn't know. I didn't know where to find it. So now I do. Thank you very much.
So I'll pick up on that. I want to be clear because it wasn't entirely to me from that last report, but is it the case that this program is likely to be fully funded by the towns?
Yes.
Or that are, the answer is yes. That's
Yes.
great.
Yep.
That's really great. Okay. All right. Are there other questions? Let me check page 2 of our attendees. Nope, not. Okay, I see no other hands raised. In which case, I have no further questions. Both of the points I raised in the memo have been addressed, and I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend the Human Services Department budget as submitted in the positive motion to the FinCom.
Second.
Thank you. Will clerk please call the roll?
All right. I believe Delegate Frederickson had to go to a meeting and is no longer with us on this call. But next would be Delegate Harder for Vice Chair Green.
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey.
Yes.
Chair O'Malley.
Yes.
Delegate Sampson for Vice Chair Ty.
Yes.
That's 4, Mr. Chair.
That motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman. Thank you,
Director
delegates.
Pacheco. Yeah,
Thank
okay.
Yeah.
Move along now to what I think is the most complex, I'm not saying controversial, complex of our budgets. And that's really solely a function of how broad is the scope of the Health and Environment Department. So who do we have? Who do we have here? Who's on the call from Health and Environment? Oh,
So
Director Gardner, I see you there. Okay, perfect. And I will again ask if the Administrator Dutton has anything to say about this department.
I do. I just you sort of took the words out of my mouth. This department has a very broad range of tasks to complete on an annual basis and services to provide on an annual basis. So I will defer to Jay to discuss it in detail and his team. He's got an excellent team on board, but I do want to acknowledge that it is quite robust and quite complex. But with that, I would turn it back to Jay.
Thank you. Director Gardner.
Oop, you're on mute there, Jay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and the delegates. Appreciate this opportunity. And Chairman O'Malley, I appreciate your memo on earlier to identify what are our top priorities. Clearly, when you look across the Cape, housing and water quality, both drinking water, right, and recreational, are a top priority. And your four questions really focused on our lab. And with me is a new face to some of you folks is Randy Kolstad, and he's our deputy director in the for health and environment, and the lab director Dan White is here as well. Between the three of us, we'll be able to provide some information for you. And I think, you know, it's well recognized. The Assembly has been very supportive of the lab, and rightfully so. I entered this department and the county at a time with a very austere budget, and you supported 2.5 positions. That was well recognized. And prior to my arrival, some equipment with PFAS, we can talk about that and answer those questions for you. But we very much appreciate it's not overlooked the support that the Assembly has had, and you recognize the importance of our water quality lab.
I think we do. So, all right. Well, okay, then let's start with a little bit of that review, because one of the things I'm concerned about, and the kind of focus of my questions is last year there was quite a robust discussion, and we spent some real time digging into our projections because positions were being added, and the concern was whether the resulting revenue would be adequate to pay for those positions. Again, given the sort of tenuous financial web that we work on at the county. So what I'm looking for is projections were made back then. How do they look in the rear view mirror for what volumes of testing came in, what revenues were generated? That's kind of where I was going with the memo. It was done largely to refresh my own memory, quite frankly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan White has some good information. I think those projections those were favorable. And let's ask Dan to maybe give some context and some detail to that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and delegates. So we were projecting $1.1 million revenue, but we're on track to exceed that by quite a bit. We're already at 968,000, and we have the spring coming up. It's going to be much busier than we are right now. So of PFAS, that was another big question we had.
Yes.
How much we would see with that.
That's right.
This fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yep. Since this fiscal year, I was just running the numbers. We've taken in 703 PFAS samples. That's a revenue that $260 a sample. That's a revenue of $186,000. And there's another 50 field blanks, $150 each. That's another $7,500 on top of that.
If you would, let me stop you just a second. You gave a number there. How does that look for how many weeks we're into this year? I referenced what our projections were, samples per week back then.
Yeah. So I broke it down per month, and it looks like, it fluctuates a little bit busier in the summer months as more people are around, of course. We were doing around 80 to 100, up to 140 samples a month. So that's 20 to about
20 to
35 per week.
35. Yeah.
Yep, and then we've fallen off quite a bit in the since December. There's fewer people around. A lot of our customers are domestic people here, well owners. So I anticipate that picking up again in the spring. So you know, we're doing well for our projections.
It sounds like it. Yes, that's right. All right. The second position that came up. So that's good. I mean, it's good to know that the projections were realized, were realistic, and that you have been able to actually realize them, and so that revenue is able to cover that position. So the second one, I wondered about, and it's less a look back, but that about the bacteriologist and the fact that the cost of that sampling is for marine water is covered by the grant, but not for fresh water. And where are we at with negotiation with the towns on that one?
I think
So I
I'd
can-
rather.
Yeah, if you want me to add to that. So we, right now, so that everybody is aware, we do beach sampling, not freshwater. We do saltwater beach sampling and provide those results to the town. So when your beach is closed, it's all Dan's fault. And when the beach reopens, it's all Dan's attributable to Dan as well. So, but we get reimbursed some of that sampling cost to the tune of, I think it's $35 a sample from the state. So there is no mechanism for the state to participate in that reimbursement for freshwater testing. And so between the Cape Cod Commission's work and our work, we anticipate that there will be a role for us to test more fully freshwater beaches, but we have not pending what the commission comes up with and their partners. We have not engaged the towns yet on freshwater testing reimbursements or costs, nor the state for that matter.
Am I understanding correctly that we are doing those samples?
Yeah.
But we're eating the cost at this point.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a collaboration with the APCC initiative? There is, yeah. All right.
There is not for the bacterial beach sampling, but for cyanotoxin monitoring.
Yes. Right. Okay.
And they pay for those samples. We do not eat the cost of cyanotoxin analysis. We charge APCC, and we've had a few from the state, from the DPH this year as well.
All right. And as far as we know, as far as you know, the grant funding for the bacteriologist that's a part-time for beach sampling is that's stable, that's safe?
Yes, that's been renewed. That's been renewed for this year.
Grant renewed. Excellent. And right. So the last question was, and this one's not as easily determined, but we did approve the assistant lab director position last year. That was kind of a requirement on the part of the state. They made a shall we say, a very strong suggestion. And it was our feeling in our discussions last year that we didn't want to jeopardize our certification for the lab. So we made that improvement. Clearly, it sounds like the question I posed there, has our growth in revenue for the lab justified that, is resoundingly, the answer is yes.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. It's essential, I think, at this point to have that extra help in the leadership of the lab and in the quality control and review. As the lab expands, I really appreciate being able to take a vacation for a week and not stress so much. And like you said, the DEP requires us to have this extra level of verification on our data now. Wouldn't be possible with our current staffing without our laboratory deputy director.
Can you point to any particular reasons why our volume has been so positive? Are we outreaching, or is it just word of mouth or
I think
reputation?
I think it's some of both. I think we have a very good reputation. I know some work has been pushed our way, even by the state, our good reputation with them. They recommend us. I know that there's more interest and more awareness from different factors around the Cape about our water quality.
Yes,
I see a lot more concern coming from homeowners. I've been in this position almost 7 years, and I definitely have seen an increase in phone calls from people concerned about their
Right.
drinking water. And many new people who, have told me, oh, I've lived in this house for 10 years. I never thought to test my well water. And as word gets out, people realize that this is a regular thing they should be doing. So I think it's a variety of factors in that. I think the PFAS issue has not just concerns with PFAS, but woken people up more to water
In
quality.
general. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
in general. And the APCC's work with cyanotoxin, that makes people more aware of their ponds and their bathing beaches as well.
Right. So it feels like we're meeting a need, and I
Yeah,
think that's great.
definitely.
I think that's really great. All right, I'm going to segment this bit a little bit here and ask the committee if we have questions around the lab before we proceed to the mass test center. I don't see questions here, and I think, no, I don't have another screen of participants. All right, then I see. I thank you. I thank you both. I think especially Mr. White, and let me turn to Director Brian Baumgartel of the Mass Test Center for that part. I'm interested in essentially what the year has brought for you in terms of volumes, in terms of projections, what you thought was going to happen, what's happening, grants. Give us an overview, if you would.
Sorry, Brian, you're muted. Bum.
There we go. That's a rookie mistake. You think I would have gotten past that by now. Sorry about that. So to look at my projections for the year, and we're about 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year at this point, happy to report that our revenues are at 75% of my projections. So for the year, I was budgeting 709,000 total revenues for the test center. And at this point, we have brought in 533,000. So it represents just about 75% revenue collection at this point. And that number will actually end up being a little bit under, I'm happy to report, because we still have half of our year's worth of billing to do. So we'll actually generate significantly more revenue than we were projecting. A lot of that has to do with certification testing here at the test center. So what we do is kind of divided into two buckets. First is the research and development work that we provide for private companies and for our grant activities. And then there is also the certification testing work that we do in relation to National Sanitation Foundation for products. And that is a fairly turnkey process that generates significant revenues, not only for the test center, but also for the laboratory as well. Each of the NSF tests we do generates probably in a realm of $60,000 of revenue, and it's split about half and half between the two. So that's been very effective at keeping us in the positive. If you look back at the last 10 years, we've had a positive total revenue over expenses each year in 8 out of 10 years. So we've done really well across the most, sort of recent history. And then looking into the near future, of course, as we've come and talked a couple of times about the Gates Foundation work that we're putting together. That's a set of certifications that also look to generate pretty significant revenues for both the test center and the water quality laboratory. I expect those tests to run in six-figure territory, probably north of 150,000 or so. So we're doing quite well.
Review what the Gates Foundation piece is about again. Certainly,
Sure.
There's numbers of us on this committee who haven't heard about it. So
Sure. So about a year and a half ago or so, we were approached by the Gates Foundation to do a new set of testing related to their Toilet of the Future initiative. And that initiative is intended to bring sanitation fixtures to third world countries, underdeveloped parts of the world. We don't use third world country language anymore.
Right.
And they've come to realize that, while bringing those fixtures to those areas of the world is a good thing to do, the companies that are developing those technologies need markets within, developed countries so that they can generate revenue so that they can continue to function, right? They can't just donate fixtures and expect to make money. So what they did was approach us and another organization in France. So they had one in the United States and one in Europe to do what's called non-sewered sanitation system testing. This is an ISO standard, International Standards Organization, that will certify products that are on-site in nature, so similar to our advanced on-site septic systems, but they are completely non-reliant on sewer or proximity to sewer. They're able to handle everything that comes into them, including the solids that are produced, whereas most systems still have a solid that needs to be taken care of. So they approached us specifically. We received a $2.8 million grant from them to capacity build. So that included a significant amount of money to purchase the equipment, et cetera, that we would need to do the testing, and to bring in the staffing that we need to get us set up to do the new testing. And that includes a whole accreditation piece for the ISO standard as well.
that's impressive. That's a long-term commitment on their part, is it not?
It is. The grant itself was fairly short term because Gates is a very aggressive organization. They want things like yesterday, right?
Okay.
So, we're doing our best to work within, our government procurement structure to get things done very quickly. And we've been very successful at that thus far. That the grant is relatively short term, but the projects themselves will run, I would expect, at least over the next 3 to 5 years, if not longer, with the number of systems that they have sort of in their queue right now. And that's just the ones that are in the queue. That's not looking at, future technologies that may come as a result of this. So this should be able to essentially become a self-sustaining sort of sideline for the test center is kind of
Not
where this
dependent on
ends up.
Right. It's not
Yep.
dependent on the grants. It's dependent on, this is funded by the applicants.
Exactly.
themselves.
Yep.
To what extent is grant funding an issue for you, and how stable does that look?
Well, obviously, federal grants are evaporated, essentially. There's still some out there, but they come with terms that might not be quite as favorable as we would like. So, but that doesn't mean we don't have any federal grants right now. We do have an EPA SNEP grant for our septic utility program, which continues, and that will continue for the next year and a half or so. We're opportunistic. So while the federal picture has sort of dissolved a bit right now, we're looking at private organizations and those who would like to partner up with us. So as an example, for a number of years, we have partnered with the Nature Conservancy for funding for the septic utility program. There have been some private benefactors who have donated fairly significant funds for research here at the test center. So, we're still on the hunt for money to keep the grants sort of going, but in the short term, what we have for grants is able to offset the costs that we need them to. And sort of looking down the road, I'm always trying to set things up to be sustainable and to be less reliant on grants. But, as these things kind of go, projects don't always align nicely. So you end up, kind of needing resources, not when you would really like them to come on board. So it's always a balance. But, we're opportunistic. We're always on the hunt, looking for funds wherever we can to drive the research that we're doing here.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask for questions from members of the standing committee. Again, Delegate Harder.
You know me, I always have questions. I happened to be on a Zoom earlier today with the other Brian, talking about the project in Falmouth.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering is there enough? I know that's like a separate grant, but
Mhm.
that's a project that seems to me, for people who don't know, they're setting up these tests, 25 households in Falmouth to work on, other systems, urine diversion and composting toilets and yada yada. Or actually, it's just composting, right? It's not urine diversion yet, right? So I'm wondering if you see anything coming up that could work on that, or if you think maybe it's worth the county's time now to throw a little money towards that.
So the project you're referring to is actually mostly related to urine diversion. The composting toilet's a little bit smaller, but it kind of depends on the household. Just to explain to the committee, so urine diversion is the basic concept is rather than putting urine, which contains somewhere in the realm of 85% of the nitrogen and about 75% of the phosphorus in our waste stream, pun intended there. I have to say that at this point. So we take that out of the waste stream and treat it separately. And the hopefully the ultimate destination for it is to put it into potentially fertilizers and to see the development of fertilizer products within the Commonwealth. Because as we all know, whenever we buy fertilizer, there's 3 numbers on the front of the bag. That's an NPK ratio, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And I just listed the 2 big ones that are on that bag, nitrogen, phosphorus, right? It's in our urine. So the basic concept is don't put it in our waste stream to begin with to have to try to remove it in a treatment plant. Why not separate that out and try to turn it back into the resource that it really is? So we've been working with Falmouth for about 3 years now, trying to put together a pilot project, which is intended to not only see who would do it and how many people might be interested in doing it and try to assess the social acceptance of something that's completely different from what we're all used to. But it's also intended to look at the cost benefit analysis of that. So, if the town were to say, folks could install urine diversion fixtures in lieu of, say, putting in an alternative septic system, or perhaps even connecting to sewer, is the cost associated with that a net offset by the potential revenue of the fertilizer production or the reduction in treatment capacity potentially? So, this project is intended to look at the whole life cycle of something like that to suss out really what the applicability is on an economic standpoint, as well as a sort of a social acceptance standpoint. So looking down the road in that, I think MassTC's role is really to help kickstart this, to do some of the research on how this could potentially work. And then MassTC would really sort of we're not interested in managing that sort of long term, right? That needs to become ultimately an industry driven type of scenario. I think we will be involved tangentially long term. And potentially our septic utility program could be involved in the management of the materials that are generated as a result of that as well. So, long term for MassTC, we're just trying to push the research and get the information that we need to make it a viable option or not. And then, let others start to run with it a little bit more.
Okay, I always mix them up. What toilet does what? Okay, yeah, because, as somebody pointed out today, there's this freak out because the cost of fertilizer is going sky high. And so I'm thinking this might be a really good time to go to regulators and grant funders and say, look what we can do. So anyway, thanks, Brian.
You're very welcome. And actually, so there are two commercial products that are approved by MDR that are urine-derived products. One of them is called We Bloom. I forget the name of the other, but they are in the market actually right now if you want to look for them and use them.
So that suggests that there are industry, there's a market for what would be coming out of these, because clearly this is a volume dependent thing. It's hardly going to be worth it if only a few dozen people have them. But if it became acceptable, then the volumes go up and it would work. You'd have people wanting to buy it. That's great.
Yep.
All right. I see no other hands raised. All right. At this point, I realize in the question, in the memo I sent, Brian, thank you so much for your questions. I think I'm going to go back to the other part of the lab just for a second, and ask whether I asked a question about I put it wrong in my memo. Not the BOD, it was a total organic carbon analyzer. Is Director White still on the call? Yes, you are. How has that worked out?
Well,
I misspoke when I wrote that.
Like we had spoken about before, TOC is one of those analysis that is not regular in its demand. A lot of it depends on the Mass TC and the particular projects they are. So one year we had 300 samples that needed to be run. And another, I think last year we had 50. So far this year, we haven't had any TOC samples come in. That's not saying they won't. It's a very difficult thing to predict. So we're still planning to go ahead and replace our old instrument. But one good year of TOC, several projects that demand it, pays for the instrument. And the last one lasted 20 years. So right now, there's not a whole lot of demand for the TOC instrument, total organic carbon, if anyone's interested. But its potential is still there. And we do have a certification with the state for that instrument that we need to maintain by doing a proficiency test once a year.
Right. Now, I'm assuming that the lab person responsible for that is applied somewhere else. They're not dedicated.
No. And actually, we had a change in our chemist. Our chemist who was responsible for that, Li Ping, has left, and I'm training the new person. I'm now the chemist trained on it, but I'm training the new replacement how to run it.
Right. Well, thank you. So there's a case where our projections have fallen fallen short.
Well, it's hard to do a projection of TOC. It's like last year I said we had, I think it was 50 samples. The year before it was over 300.
Yeah.
So, and the nice thing about a TOC instrument is it doesn't require a lot of maintenance if it's not being run. It can sit and it doesn't, and then when it is used, it's not using a bunch of reagents or anything that need to be kept up to date. So it can be mothballed for long periods of time, and then it's got to be run once a year at least for proficiency tests, but we definitely have that much need for it.
Okay.
The other alternative is for us to sub the samples out and not run TOC in-house, which is always something we're looking at. Which analysis do we keep in? Which do we send out? What are we making up in revenue? Because, or not revenue, but in costs, in operating costs, because revenue is the same either way.
as I recall, wasn't the big question with that analyzer the service contract?
Yeah, the service contract, service contracts are expensive. One of our lines that have gone up this year dramatically is because of service contracts.
Right.
But we don't need a service contract if we're not running it very often.
Right.
At this level, I wouldn't buy a service contract. It'll be under warranty for at least a year anyway. But if we do start seeing more need for it again, then we may want to consider a service contract with a preventive maintenance visit from the manufacturer and all the things that go along with it. But as it is right now, no, service contract wouldn't be necessary.
So just to follow this a second long, a couple of years ago, we had 300 test samples, or 50. Or 50. It was 300, and then you said last year was 50.
Yeah.
What accounted for those? Where were those coming from? And what happened to that?
Well, actually, I probably the person to ask, and maybe I'll
Brian?
answer this a little bit as Brian. He's got his
Yeah.
hand up too.
All right, you still on the line, I hope?
I sure am. Yep. So thank you for recognizing me. Yeah, I just wanted to provide a little bit more context to that. So for us, TOC analysis is really driven by grants in the research side of things. TOC is not a regulatory parameter. It's not typically required, but it is something that is mostly associated with the virus testing that we do here, because the two parameters are sort of correlated together. So because we have, most of that grant funding for that type of research is federal dollars. It's not typically private dollars that drive that type of research. We here have also had to idolize virus analysis a bit as well in the meantime. So, I don't know when that's going to tick back up again. It's kind of dependent on us finding grant projects that we can use TOC for. But as I said, right now it's all federally driven dollars for that type of research, and we're just not seeing that money out there right now.
Got it. That's an understandable, and it was not entirely predictable a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. All right. Do we have anyone else with anything more to add, with any questions to ask? And if not, I'm willing to entertain a motion on this for the H&E department. Delegate Harder.
All right. I just also, is an emergency department under this, or did we split that up?
That's actually still in this department.
Right. And I just wanted to ask, since we had one heck of a snowstorm, since the budget was first written, are there any changes? Was there enough budgeted to get us through this? And if so, do you think that's enough for next year?
Great question. I'll defer to Jay on that question.
Sure. Well, thank you for first of all, recognize the extraordinary work that the county, we were the collaborators on this, but really it was across the Cape. It really was extraordinary. Nonprofits, municipalities, superintendents of schools, so many people participated in that. We don't anticipate, first of all, to answer your question, we were prepared on that. We put shelters up, 14 warming centers. I don't envision any change to that line item, but it really was an extraordinary. It doesn't happen very often. We haven't put up shelters here on the Cape for quite some time, but I mean, I hate to be a rain cloud, but I mean, a hurricane can come along. We were prepared, but we don't imagine or don't foresee having to expand that. We're always looking to modernize that. We're always looking to say, how can we do this better? With our volunteer program and coordination and technology. Many of you know we used AmeriCorps staff. The young adults helped us in the sheltering system. We'll be looking to kind of memorialize that capacity. But to answer your question directly, no, I don't see an uptick now. We don't foresee that in the emergency line item.
That's great. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions, I will once again open this to a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we send a positive recommendation to the Finance Committee regarding the Health and Environment budget.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
All right, Mr. Chair. So Delegate Frederickson, I believe, is still not with us. So Delegate Harder for Vice Chair Green,
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey,
Yes.
Chair O'Malley,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson for Vice Chair Ty.
Yes.
That's 4.
That motion carries and will be forwarded to the Finance Committee. With that,
Thank you.
I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Please roll on that one.
All right. Delegate Frederickson, Delegate Harder for Delegate Green,
Thank you. Yes.
Delegate McKelvey,
Very helpful tonight. Yes.
Chair O'Malley,
Yes.
and Delegate Sampson for Delegate or Vice Chair Ty.
Yes.
All right.
I thank you all for your participation. I declare this meeting adjourned. Have a good
Nice.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.